Welcome again. I'm very pleased to welcome everyone to our session dedicated to health insurance in Belgium. The guest speaker of today is Maxime Manderlier from AON. Maxime will go through the main questions related to health insurance solutions for expats in Belgium and also give a special attention to questions related to vaccination. You will be muted, so if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box or wait for the Q&A session that will start approximately 20 minutes before the end of the session. We will end the session at 10 sharp to make sure everyone has the time to go back to regular activities. So enjoy your time, take some coffee if you have close by, and we will unmute everyone again after Maxime's presentation. Maxime, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eleanor, for having me today.
Maxime, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay. I didn't see you mute me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Eleanor, for having me today. Good morning, everyone. So by way of introduction, so my name is Maxime Manderlier, and I work for AON as an international people mobility consultant. So today, as Eleanor said, I will give you a brief introduction of the public healthcare system in Belgium and the different solutions that are available to you to cover your medical costs. So I'm trying to go to the next slides if my computer works. In the meantime, I'll just give you a short introduction about who we are at AON. So AON is a leading insurance broking and consulting company in the field of human resources, risk and reinsurance solutions. We are an international company present in about 120 countries around the world, and we have about 55,000 employees. Here in Belgium, our offices are in Brussels, and we have a couple of other more in Antwerp and Ghent. So that I have some computer issue, I can't go to the next slide, unfortunately. So I think, Eleanor, you were wrong. The technical is not with me, at least this morning. So I'll try to do it a different way. It's easier if I show you the slides.
Let me know, Maxime. Oh, it works.
Okay,
It works. Yes, please go ahead.
So we can skip that. So before we dig into the main subject of today, it's important to first of all consider what is the purpose of your stay here in Belgium. Are you here in Belgium on a temporary assignment because you were sent by your employer into Belgium for a certain period of time? Did you come to Belgium to establish yourself here and find a job, or to maybe set up a business? Did you come here for your study? Or maybe you just accompany your partner here in Belgium who were sent on assignment? Or maybe you also decided to retire here in Belgium after having worked here for a few years, or just because you love our country and decided to retire here in Belgium. So it's very important to have that first aspect in mind in order to select the most appropriate choice in terms of medical cover during your stay in Belgium. We've talked, and we'll talk a lot about expats, but the definition of an expat doesn't really mean anything, and it means everything at the same time. Because there is no legal definition of what is an expat. So by common sense, we would say that an expat is someone who lives in another country than its home country. But that's it. So it could be, as I said, a student. It could be someone who decided to just move to Belgium for his work, or was sent by his employer or her employer for a temporary period of time in Belgium. So there is no legal definition behind that. On the contrary, there is a legal definition of what is a posted worker. And that is very important because it has implications in terms of labor law, such as the working conditions, such as minimum salary, but also in terms of public health care and social security. So a posted worker, according to the EU directive, is a worker, is an employee who is sent to another EU country for a period of time from up to 2 years, maximum 5 years. During that period, this employee will maintain his or her social security rights of her home country. So I take the example of me. I'm a Belgian employee. My employer sent me to Portugal for 2 years. Then in that case, I can be considered as a posted worker in the case that I maintain my social security rights in Belgium. The opposite is true as well. I'm a Portuguese employee. I'm sent to Belgium for a couple of years by my Portuguese employer. I can remain affiliated to the social security system in Portugal during that period of time. So very important to know the difference between an expat and a posted worker, because a posted worker will always be an expat, but an expat is not always a posted worker. And that will have implications in terms, as I said, of social security and health insurance, which I will explain a bit more in details in the following slides. So to the question of which social security should be affiliated to, well, the first question is your your professional situation, which implies also the duration of your stay in Belgium. And the second question is your home country. So as I said, within the European Union, we have that agreement posted working directive that defines some working rules. Outside the EU, there is sometimes what we call a bilateral agreement between the countries, and in the case of Belgium, for example, Belgium has bilateral agreements with the US, with Canada, with Japan, with India and other countries. And those bilateral agreements replicate a bit the same principle as we have in the EU, except that some aspects of the social security are not always taken into consideration. That's important as well. I'll take the example of Japan, where there's a bilateral agreement between Belgium and Japan, but that agreement does not include the reimbursement of medical costs. So as a Japanese citizen, if you come to Belgium as a posted worker, you will have to be covered through another way for your medical costs than with the social security system. So you will have to take a private medical insurance. Okay. Here you will find a little table which will define the different options in terms of social security and help you determine which social security you should be affiliated to or have to be affiliated to. So first question is whether you come from an EU or non-EU country. So assuming you come from an EU country, you look at the left side of the table. The next question is whether do you work full-time in Belgium or not? If it's the case, then the next question is, do you still have a link with your employer in your home country? If the answer to that is yes, then you are considered as a posted worker and you can maintain your social security rights for a period of 2 years and to some exceptions up to 5 years. If you don't have any link anymore with your employer in your home country, then you have to move to the Belgium social security system. Okay, if you work for different employers. The next question is, do I work more than 25% in Belgium? If that's the case, then you have to be affiliated to the Belgian Social Security. If you work for different employers, you need to see whether you work for more than one, then you will take the Social Security of your country of residence, assuming here in Belgium. If you work for only one employer, then you will remain affiliated to the Social Security system of the country of your employer. So moving to the right side of the table, and if you come from a non-EU country, then the question is whether is there a bilateral agreement between my country and Belgium. If it's the case, then you fall back into the left side of the table, and then you answer the different questions again. If there is no bilateral agreement between the two countries, in theory, you could potentially remain affiliated to both systems, but certainly you will be affiliated to the Social Security in Belgium. So if you come to Belgium or any other EU countries for a very limited period of time, you can ask a copy of the health insurance card to your Social Security in your home country to benefit from the same rights and the same protection during your stay in Belgium or in another EU country. So to be registered to the Social Security system in Belgium, there are two methods, two ways of contributing. On one side, your employer will have to pay Social Security contributions, which include contribution to the healthcare system. And on the other end, you will have to be affiliated to one of what we call mutuel or mutualiteit, second fund in Dutch, to get reimbursement of your medical costs. So that link with the mutuel needs to be established by individuals by registering themselves with one of the public health insurance providers. So to get reimbursement from medical costs, you need to be registered by one of these mutual, and there is very little difference in terms of level of cover between these public health insurance provider, because the level of reimbursement of medical cost is determined by an institution in Belgium which is called INAMI or RISIF, which will determine each level of reimbursement for each ever kind of treatments or drugs. So the difference is mainly about political or religious beliefs, such as Catholic, such as socialist or independent. And I must say that some are maybe more equipped to deal with international populations because their staff, they have maybe a bigger staff that speak English. Other than that, they're really very similar from one to another. So Belgium is known to have one of the strongest public healthcare system, and the level of reimbursement of medical treatments and drugs is fairly high. So it is between 50 and 75% of medical costs. As a matter of example, you will have, if you go to the doctor, to a general practitioner, you will have to pay a fee of around between 20 and 30 euro, and pretty much half of that will be reimbursed by the Social Security. So the Social Security will cover your inpatient hospitalization cost, also outpatient costs if you go to a general practitioner or have to undergo a special treatments for a particular condition. It reimburses also part of your dental treatments, etc. So it's a fairly large level of cover. The only difference is between the various public health insurance providers are more about some more comfort benefits, such as glasses and frames or subscriptions to sport facilities or sport events, for which you could get a fixed reimbursement of around 50 euro per year or things like that. So It is in those smaller kind of benefits that you can see the limits that can vary from one provider to another. Obviously, well, not everything is covered by the public healthcare system, so there's always some part of the cost that will remain at your cost. So if we think about just a doctor visit, then the part that is at risk or at your cost is fairly marginal. But if you have to undergo a long care treatment, or if you have a very rare disease that needs some special treatments, etc., obviously the like 25% that remain at your cost can become costly in the end if you need to follow long-term care treatment. So it is certainly advised to have in Belgium complementary hospitalization insurance. In Belgium, it is very common if you're an employee that employer provides that kind of cover for their staff. So it is very common. It is much less common that they will offer an outpatient or a dental plan. However, some of them offer flexible plans in which the employee can select those additional benefits. But so it is really advised to at least have an hospitalization cover in Belgium. You can subscribe those insurances through your mutual, so the public healthcare providers, or through private insurance companies. In most cases, employers will have an hospitalization plan with a private medical insurance company. What is also useful when having such kind of insurance cover is that when you have an hospitalization treatment, there can be a direct billing between the insurance company and the hospital, so the health facility, so that you don't have to pay out of your pocket and that everything is arranged between the insurance company and the hospital. So another option, and in this one is maybe more fit for expats or posted workers that come to Belgium for a more limited period of time, of a few years. It's an international medical insurance. So in case you're not affiliated to the public healthcare system in Belgium, or you need a broader coverage than the ones that are available in Belgium, you have the possibility as an individual or through your employer to be covered through an international medical plan. So this kind of cover is provided by international insurers that are present all over the world. And typically, this insurance will cover all your medical costs, hospitalization, outpatient and dental to some extent, wherever you are around the world. So it doesn't matter if you are affiliated to the social healthcare system of a particular country, this kind of insurance will cover all your medical costs as from the first euro or first dollar or whatever currency is valid in the country you're staying in. Another advantage of this kind of insurance is that you can take it with you wherever you are in the world. So if you are the kind of person who needs to change country every 2 or 3 years, such as ambassadors, I take for example, or expats that always are on the road for the company, you can maintain the same level of cover wherever you are. So it avoids the surprise that if you change country, well, the trends are different. There are things that are covered in certain countries and not in others, and it avoids well, bad surprises often in moments where you need it most. Next to that, those kind of insurance also include repatriation and medical evacuation cover. So also if you, for example, you're diagnosed with a very serious disease during your assignment in Belgium, well, that insurance will still be valid in your home country in the case that you prefer returning to your home country to follow a particular treatment. And that obviously will observed mainly also for people who remain only temporary to in a country of assignment. The language is also sometimes a barrier. I mean, you're sometimes used to your own way or kind of treatments or the way people are treated in a particular country, and you prefer following a treatment in your home country rather than having to do it in Belgium. And it's the same everywhere in the world. We feel sometimes more comfortable to be surrounded by environments that we know better. So important difference between the first setup, which is to be affiliated to the social security system in Belgium and have a complementary insurance in Belgium with a local insurer, and the next option, which is to take an international insurance with an international insurance provider that will cover all your medical costs. There are some hybrid solutions, but I won't go into much detail about that. So important, I think, takeaways for you as expat, maybe as posted worker. Obviously, it's important to be prepared before anything urgent or serious happens, because you don't want to get a surprise when arriving at the hospital in an emergency and a stress that something is covered or not covered. So it's important to understand really all of that works in Belgium, which are the solutions that are available to you, whether you take the first solution or the second solution. It's important to understand, and I didn't mention it already, that there's quite a difference in costs in terms of having a complementary cover here in Belgium with a local provider or in international cover. So just to give you an idea of the cost of a hospitalization plan with a local provider in Belgium, the annual cost would be around 300 and 400 euro per year, where for an hospitalization cover only, so you need to add outpatient dental if you want these on top, and the cost for an international cover for the same level of benefits would be about 5 times more expensive. Obviously, the international insurance will cover your costs as from the first year, where with the complementary insurance that will depend on the level of reimbursement from the Social Security, so as a top-up of the Social Security. So that was it for the core, the core presentation. So maybe, I don't know if you agree with me, I will touch base on the questions we received through the subscriptions to the event, and maybe we can get some other questions if we have time, or if people have other questions.
Yes, Maxime, please go ahead.
Thank you. So those questions will really give a practical view on the very theoretical things we just seen before. So the first question we got was, what is the difference between the mutual and the private health insurance? So I briefly explained that earlier in the presentation, but the mutuelle or mutualité is a public health insurance provider. So it is the first step to get reimbursement of your medical costs in Belgium, if you have to or should be affiliated to the social security system in Belgium. So this is the basic insurance cover that every person in Belgium should have, unless you're a posted worker or other status for which it is not required to be affiliated. So the private insurance is advised certainly for all hospitalization treatments and costs. So you should take, if it's not provided by your employer, it's advised to take that on top of what is reimbursed by the mutuelle, because there's always a gap that will remain at your cost otherwise. So I hope that I answered this clearly, and that the person who raised this question is happy with the answer. You can always comment, obviously, if not. The second question, in other EU countries, private insurance is extremely expensive. How does it work in Belgium in terms of mutual versus insurance provided by employers versus private insurance? So the subscription to the mutual, I think, is around 30 euro per quarter, I think, something around that. So it's very affordable, because obviously part of the cost of public health care is funded by the employer, or if you're self-employed, you have to contribute that as a self-employed as well. But so it's fairly affordable to be covered in Belgium for the basic insurance. So next to that, the employer can obviously, and it's very often the case in Belgium, at least provide an hospitalization cover that will cover the gap between the mutuelle and what is normally at your cost. The premiums are normally also paid by the employer. Sometimes it is shared, and sometimes the employer will also cover the premium, so will pay the premium for your family members. For some other, you can affiliate your family members to the plan as well, but it will be at your cost. So that depends from one employer to another. And I'm not sure what the person meant by private insurance, but maybe that person referred to an international cover. So if that's the good assumption, then an international cover will replace the mutuelle and the complementary cover here in Belgium. The costs are quite different, as I said, because, well, amongst other reasons, the international cover will not consider the part that is covered by the mutuelle, so will cover all your costs, and obviously the cost that need to be covered is larger than if you only cover the gap, what the complementary insurance in Belgium would do. What do the mutuals cover? I think I answered that question during the presentation, but as a reminder, so the mutual will cover the basic costs of your medical treatments, whether they are hospitalization, outpatient, or dental, or even some other comfort benefits, such as glasses or contact lenses. So the public healthcare system in Belgium is fairly large. Move to the next question. So there wasn't really a question about it, but I will give a short explanation about what is the DOS, or the AWESOME, which is an acronym which I won't translate, but basically it is called now the Overseas Social Security. So it's a system that replicates the social security in Belgium, but for expats. So it's a system to which, as an expat, you can affiliate yourself in case you work abroad during a defined or undefined period of time. The main package that the Overseas Social Security provides is mainly a contribution to the pension system, like you would do in Belgium during your assignment. So if you leave the social security system in Belgium because you move to a non-EU country or to another EU country, but for a long period of time, you have the choice to continue contributing to the Belgian system through this overseas social security. So as I said, the main benefit is a contribution to the pension system, but also you would receive an allowance in case of disability. There is an option, it's not part of the main package, but to also take a medical cover that replicates more or less what the mutual would reimburse, or the public healthcare system in Belgium would reimburse should you be in Belgium. Except that for those medical costs abroad, the overseas social security will cover a fixed amount of 75% of your costs, whereas in Belgium, well, it varies from one treatment to another. So with the social security, overseas social security, the level of reimbursement is fixed, but there's still 25% of the cost that are at your charge. So this is really mainly for outbound expats, so people who leave Belgium to another country. I must say that, well, it still exists as well, although the premiums are extremely low for the medical cover. So it's always, I think, a question of time, and maybe a political question as to whether this level of premium can still will still be maintained for long, because obviously if the premiums are very low, the question is whether this system is sustainable on the long term. So the next question was whether the law of Verwilligen is still in place. So the law of Verwilligen says that every employer should made aware and give the option to an employee to continue on an individual basis his or her medical plan in case that person leaves the company. So it's an obligation in Belgium that needs to be fulfilled by employers. So let's assume that I quit a company, I quit my employer, and I decide to maybe take a break of 2 years to go around the world, for example, or just take care of my children, of any reason you quit your employer, you have the right to ask your employer to continue your insurance cover for medical treatments on an individual basis, and at the same time that your pre-existing conditions are covered and that there's no waiting period, which is the case if you take an insurance usually on an individual basis out of the scratch. So it's an obligation from the employer, and you as an employee, you have the right to continue your medical plan or not. Obviously, if you just change employer and you change job, probably that other employer in Belgium will have also a medical plan, in which case, well, you just change plan. You don't need to continue in the plan of your former employer. Another question is, if I already have a private insurance, are there any reasons to join the Belgian public system? That is a bit difficult to answer, because it would depend on, well, the level of cover that is provided through this private insurance. Assuming we're speaking about an international plan, the answer would be probably no, because that private plan will be probably larger than what the public healthcare system would cover. So that would be my feedback based on that question. I don't know if that person who raised the question would like to develop maybe the question and talks about his or her own situation. Don't be shy if the person is in the audience.
Do you know who did ask that question, Maxime?
I don't have the list in front of me because I'm sharing my screen. So
yes,
if the happy with the
I think I think Ravinder Pedala has dropped a similar question on the chat box, which is my employer also gives a health insurance by GVK. And Ravinder thinks this is out of mutual. And he's wondering if he still needs to buy a private health insurance again. Ravinder, are you still in the meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Please, if you can elaborate.
Okay. This is currently I'm an expat, of course, as a postal worker. I'm working here. Maybe starting from January, I'm switching my employer, and my new employer says we are giving a GVK a private health insurance, even covering the family, and there. I'm sure here they also mentioned the social security will be taken care by the employer. And there my question is, do I need to buy a private insurance to cover what? I don't know. I'm assuming the GVK will cover the rest of the things which are not covered by the public or the mutual. And then I have a private health insurance by GVK. I'm assuming both of them should be able to cover to the max, or on top I still do I need to have it?
The GVK, I'm not sure, this name doesn't ring a bell to me in terms of local insurer in Belgium. Maybe you speak about the DKV.
DKV?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I told you.
Yes, that's what I thought too. Okay.
So if you're covered with the DKV, which is an insurance company in Belgium, we often in Belgium refer as a DKV and hospitalization cover, but there are also other providers in the market. Usually the employer will only provide an hospitalization cover. So first of all, you need to be affiliated to a mutual in Belgium of your choice. And usually the employer will provide an hospitalization cover for their staff. So that means that if you are hospitalized, typically it also covers the 1 day stay. So if you don't need to spend overnight at the hospital to claim for an hospitalization treatment. But on the other side, and that you may want to check with your employer, whether your employer provides an outpatient cover and a dental cover. My guess is that is not the case because it's not that frequent in Belgium. That means that if you go to the doctor or a general practitioner or a specialist that does not require you to go to the hospital, then you will only have what is covered as reimbursement, what is covered by the public healthcare system, which is fairly generous, but there's always a part that remain at your charge, and the same for dental treatments. So, well, it has a cost to take that kind of insurance for yourself, but it depends on everyone's situations. But I wouldn't say you have to. Is it a good idea? Sometimes, well, yeah, depending on your maybe medical conditions or things like that.
Yeah, thank you, Maxime.
But the practice in Belgium is that people are usually only rely on the mutual, on the public healthcare system for their outpatient costs, but they have an hospitalization cover. That's what majority of the people do or have in Belgium.
Maxime, I see quite some more questions coming in the chat box. So did you have other questions from the registration forms?
No, I think that's it. I just added one that we got last time that I thought useful to have, but if well, maybe I cover quickly that one because
yes, please.
Well, first of all, there was a question about the vaccine. in the COVID-19. So
yes.
if you're the condition to be to get an invitation for the COVID-19 vaccine in Belgium is that you are registered at the commune and that you are part of the public healthcare system in Belgium. So that's the only requirement. In that case, you will receive an invitation for the vaccine. If you're not, well, then you need to see what kind of situation, what is foreseen in your own country, actually. So that's the situation in Belgium today. And the next question was, is my mutual or of private medical insurance valid abroad? Because you may go on holiday even during your stay in Belgium, whether it's temporary or long term. So I tried to summarize that quickly, but basically it is usually the case that in case of accident or sudden sickness abroad, you are covered by your mutual. So in most cases in Europe, within the case, it's much less obvious if you have an accident or an illness outside Europe during your holiday or during a business trip, for example. And if you're not covered by the mutual, because the mutual does not recognize a particular treatment abroad, usually either there's no intervention from your complementary plan in Belgium, or the level of reimbursement from the complementary plan will be very limited and usually of maximum 50%. So it's another reason maybe why sometimes, depending on the situation, an international cover is more comfortable, because obviously in that case you are covered wherever you are in the world. Otherwise, it's advised to take a travel insurance.
Yes, good. As we were talking about vaccination, I know that we have so that lots of expats or people traveling that have recently traveled from their home country to settle in Belgium do have questions about the recognition of their home country vaccine. This is obviously out of the scope of Maxime's presentation today, but if you have questions with this regard, feel free to reach out to us. We do have some tips and information available. So do you have any other comments on the answers and input that have been shared by Maxime till now? And if not, we will go to the questions of the chat box. Okay. Thank you. We will then take Cindy's question. Will international insurance companies also cover you for a posted mission that exceeds 3 months, for example? Let's take the example of a posted worker sent 5 months to Spain.
In that case, typically it is possible to be covered by an international insurance company. It's if it's paid by the employer or the person on an individual basis, but in the frame of a posted worker assignment, it is possible, but it's quite costly. At the same time, maybe in that case, it is advised or maybe recommended to maintain the same benefits as in Belgium, so the mutual and maybe a complementary plan in Belgium, and to have on top of that a travel insurance, because travel insurance, certainly for professional for business trips, the maximum period of time people can remain covered by this plan, this kind of plan, is 12 months. So I think that for very short-term assignments, it's maybe less frequent that people will have planned treatments during their 3-5 months assignments. If there is anything like urgent that need to be planned, the person would come back to his or her home country to have that treatment. It's much less easy and convenient to do that if you are on assignment of several years, obviously. So it's an option that is costly for employers, but it's possible. My recommendation would be that a travel insurance will be sufficient for such period of time.
Cindy, does that answer your question? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Actually, about Spain, just a quick comment, because it's an example I take all the time, that if you ever go to Spain for vacation or business, if you are affiliated to the public healthcare system in Belgium, you have an accident there in Spain, you will only be covered by the mutual if you go to a public healthcare provider or hospital. If you go to a private medical center in Spain, you will not be covered by your mutual, which implies that the level of reimbursement for your complementary plan, in case you're hospitalized, will be limited as well. So it's interesting to know. Sometimes you don't have the choice; you're just carried to the nearest hospital. But even for Spain, for example, it's interesting to have a travel insurance, because the travel insurance will not make the difference between public healthcare system or the private one. So even if you go to Spain, which is not so far, you always run the risk that something is not covered during your stay abroad. So that was just a
Thank you.
a tip for your next vacation.
Thank you. Yes, valuable tip. We have another question from Catherine asking, am I right in saying that if you pay Social Security and would like to receive long-term disability indemnities, if illness more than 30 days or maternity leave, for instance, that would be best to be covered by the Belgian public system? What is your advice, Maxime, on that question?
I'm not sure, as opposed to what other solution this person is comparing the Social Security. So the Social Security will pay partially the indemnity during the maternity leave. The employer is only responsible for disability up to 30 days. And usually employers in Belgium will provide also a group insurance, which includes disability benefits. If you're not affiliated to the public healthcare system in Belgium, well, you're not getting any maternity benefits. But maybe the employer of that person has an international disability plan that exists as well. And maternity is usually covered in those international disability plans.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, Kathleen?
It's a bit difficult because the obviously the point of there was no point of comparison, so I'm not sure I'm comparing the.
Yeah. Yes. Indeed. So maybe it's good to remind here that when you register with a mutuelle in Belgium, you do not need to only take into consideration all coverages you would have for health-related costs. You do also benefit from other advantages that are maternity leave, long illness, inability, and for example, contribution or allowances you would have for your children when they take part to sports camps or sports club. So when one makes a decision on health insurance and Social Security, all those aspects should be taken into consideration. And it is true that the mutuelle in Belgium covers more than only health-related cost. Do we have other questions? I'm just taking a look back to the Dropbox. No.
Again,
Yes,
we come back
Malcolm?
to the status of and the purpose of your stay. So that's also always to bear in mind, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we have covered the topic and answered the questions. Maxime, thank you very much for this. So please be reassured you will be sent the recording of the session as well as Maxime's presentation. If you have questions you would like to ask, please note the email addresses here. So Maxime's email address is maxime.mandelier@aon.com, and you can also send us a mail to connect@brightexpats.com. I can't close the session before reminding that these events are made possible by KBC Brussels. If you have any question as an expat with regards to your banking and insurance affairs, please send a mail to expat@kbcbrussels.com. We will be in touch with you again with regards to the event of next month that will be dedicated to governmental aids that are made available for people that want to renovate a house in Brussels. Make sure you register with the form that will be sent to you in the next weeks. And if you have in mind some topics of questions that you think are worth a session, send us a mail. We will take that into consideration. So thank you all for joining. A special thank to Maxime for the very interesting presentation and good hands-on insight on those important questions. And we will be in touch soon. Bye.